Alright, rolling in MMA, welcome back to the channel. Now today I want to shine a light on some dark horses, or at the very least, who I perceive to be dark horses in the UFC. Let's just give a brief definition of that term. A dark horse for me is somebody who is not super well known by the fans, not usually in conversations when titles get brought up and things like that, not a huge social media presence, and they're just in the background quietly winning and slowly moving up the ranks. Usually somebody in that top 10 to 20 range. I'm going to be giving my dark horses for every single division. I have picked at least one per each division. There were some divisions where I had to pick multiples because I didn't want to just not mention these guys that I think deserve to be mentioned and they don't get a whole lot of praise otherwise. So I've done that, okay? If you guys have a different dark horse to me, drop it in the comments down below and I will read that. We will start at flyweight and move our way up like we've been doing, okay? So the first dark horse for me at flyweight is Steve Ufc'S. This guy, phenomenal. Came from nowhere, took the David Dvorak fight on extremely short notice, which got him a top 15 spot. David Dvorak, by the way, in the last decade, has only lost to Manel Kape and also Mateus Nicolau. Both of those were decision losses, so it's not like Steve Ufc'S is, not finishing a guy that is extremely finishable. David Dvorak hasn't been finished in over a decade and has only lost to top 10 competition in the UFC in that decade. His last win over Alessandro Costa, UFC 295, my bad, almost forgot for a second, dude. Alessandro Costa before that fight was 8-1 in his last 9, and that one loss was to Amir Albazi, who I believe is ranked 3 or 4 in the UFC's flyweight division. So it's not, that guy's not losing to bums either. Very talented, young, hungry kid, and Steve Ufc'S convincingly beat him. Again, a unanimous decision victory. Both very good. I think that Steve Ufc'S could compete with some of the names that I've mentioned here. And I can't wait to see him do so come maybe late 2024 after he gets 1 or 2 more wins. I'm sure he will be in the mix in the top 5, moving up the card. Not the card, moving up to the next weight class. Bantamweight. My dark horse at bantamweight is Jonathan Martinez. Okay, this dude is on a 6-fight win streak. 2 leg kick finishes among those. The wins over Said Nurmagomedov and Adrian Yanez, to me, make him stand out. Said Nurmagomedov is a very adept striker. He's also got that nasty guillotine that he can hit whenever he wants to, seemingly, okay? Adrian Yanez also pretty good on the feet. He's a very good boxer. His kicking game is a little lacking, but it is what it is, and Jonathan Martinez absolutely exploited that. Man, I mean, this guy might be up there with Alex Pereira in terms of pound-for-pound hardest leg kick of all time. I mean, even Alex Pereira doesn't have leg kick TKOs. Now, he makes it so that his opponents make errors due to how badly he's beaten up their legs, but they're not getting up. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Jonathan Martinez will break your goddamn leg, okay? And for me, he is a dark horse. I believe he is actually ranked in the top 15, might be in the 13 to 12 range. Nobody really talks about him when we talk about who potentially could be champion. He's had a couple losses, but not for a good long while. Also, he had a weight issue, I think, once or twice in the past, but he seems to have fixed that. Hasn't missed weight in any of those 6 fights that I just mentioned. So Jonathan Martinez is my dark horse for bantamweight. Moving up to featherweight. All right, this is one of the divisions where I had to pick a couple of guys because I didn't want to leave some of them out, and they're all pretty young, and I think they've fought each other, or at the very least, one guy has fought both of them. So if you would have asked me a year ago, I might have said Sadiq Yusuff and Bryce Mitchell, but I don't really think so anymore. I think Bryce Mitchell doesn't have good enough striking to compete with the top of the featherweight division, and Sadiq Yusuff doesn't seem to have the cardio. Edson Barboza went through that rough first round, came back and won the fight. So we're gonna go over guys. They're not even ranked. Okay, first one, Joanderson Brito, okay, who, by the way, I picked as an underdog to beat Jonathan Pierce, and I even think I said that he would submit him. Either way, dude. Also, Chepe Mariscal, who actually got KO'd by Brito back in 2019. Mariscal, in my opinion, has so many good names on his record. Slammed Jack Jenkins into dislocating his arm, which, by the way, Jack Jenkins had a ton of hype on him and is one of the hardest leg kickers, much like Jonathan Martinez. He was on a tear in the UFC. Pat Sabatini beat Trevor Peek. Some of these are pre-UFC. He fought Bryce Mitchell way back when before the UFC. Gregor Gillespie way back when before the UFC. Guy's been fighting really good competition his entire career. No padded record here whatsoever. Absolute dog. Also, Brito, I'll get back to him for a second. Absolutely incredible as well. Lost his debut and then gets 4 straight finishes. His win over Chepe, I hold in very high regard. The fact that he knocked out Chepe Mariscal is huge to me, okay? Also, 87% finishing rate, 6 KOs, 8 subs, and he hasn't been finished in 8 years. I mean, phenomenal. And the guy's 28 years old. You know what I mean? He looks older than that, but still. Also, let's throw in Diego Lopez, okay? Because he has impressed us ever since he got to the UFC. Took the Movsar Evloev fight on very short notice, and in my opinion, maybe should have gotten the nod based on the damage he was doing, the submission attempts that were absolutely threatening Evloev on the ground. Evloev wasn't able to do a whole lot against Diego Lopez, and I think that if you were to run that fight back, giving Lopez a full camp, it looks very different. He's also gotten 2 stoppages in the UFC after that. He's a little more well-known than these other guys. Of course, also, I would love to see at one point Diego Lopez and Brito have a rematch because their fight was ended due to an eye poke. Brito ended up getting a technical decision, so he must have, I guess, in the judges' eyes, won 2 of the 3 rounds up until that point. But regardless, I would like to see them run it back. Those 3 guys, all of them pretty young. All of them have fought really good competition outside the UFC, and I can't fucking wait until these dudes crack the top 15, all right? Moving up to lightweight. I know to hardcore fans, this is going to seem like an obvious one, and you're going to be like, what are you talking about? He's a dark horse, and he's got a pretty sizable social media following. I would imagine the vast majority of them are Frenchmen, but regardless, Benoit Saint-Denis, okay, dude, I have been picking this guy all year, and he has not disappointed yet. In just 3 fights, he went from being a plus 240 underdog against Ismail Bonfim to a minus 225 against Matt Frevola. I mean, this guy's fucking phenomenal. All of those were finishes, by the way. Again, the plus 240 against Ismail Bonfim was insane. Despite having way more experience, way better names on his record, he goes out there and shows us why those odds were absolute bullshit. Just 2 months later against Thiago Moises, they're like, okay, I guess we trust this guy a little bit, minus 160. Goes out there and blows him out of the fucking water. And then he head kicks Matt Frevola in the first round like the savage that he is. His last loss was against... who was it? Alizo Zaleski dos Santos at welterweight, okay? Since he's been at lightweight, I don't think he's ever lost, right? Insane. Again, dude, he fought 3 times from July till now. He had 2 other scheduled fights that got canceled. This is a guy who wants to fight non-fucking stop, and as long as he keeps finishing dudes relatively early, he can probably get that wish. I can't wait to see who they match him up with next. I just feel like when people think about title winners or even contenders, I don't ever hear his name getting brought up. Now, to be fair, he's just kind of gotten to that like top 10, top 11 stage, but I think that he should have been in talks for it a long time ago now. Dude's good everywhere. 100% finishing rate. And as I said, hasn't lost since his debut, which was against Aliza Zaleski dos Santos, which is a tough out for fucking anybody, right? Aliza Zaleski dos Santos kind of just exposed Renat Fakhretdinov for his lack of cardio, his striking abilities, and things like that. Like Aliza Zaleski dos Santos is no fucking slouch, especially when you're fighting a weight class higher than you probably should be. It's insane, man. Unfortunately, lightweight is a bit of a mess with a bunch of guys at the top that don't fight down. Fiziev's injured, and Gamrot might bomb the fucking apex if he has to fight down. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know who they'll match him up against next, but we'll find out, I guess. I think that he beats a lot of these guys in the top 10, top 5 area. Moving up to welterweight, I am going with Jack Della Maddalena. Again, this might be one that the hardcore fans are like, what are you talking about? Dark horse. Everybody knows who the fuck Jack Della Maddalena is. Guy doesn't even have 100,000 Instagram followers. And when we look at a guy who's just ranked 1 spot above him, and Ian Gary has over 500,000. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I consider Jack Della Maddalena to be a dark horse. There's not a whole lot of guys at welterweight that I think can go as far as he can, at least in that, you know, the latter end of the top 15 range. Either way, I think he might have lost a little bit of hype after the Basel Hafiz fight, which, to be fair, was on extremely short notice. I don't know how it was a split decision either, okay, because he clearly won 2 rounds, in my opinion. There's no fucking argument for it whatsoever. Even Basel Hafiz's argument for why he should have gotten 2 rounds was control time, you know, and he went on to say, people who think I don't win don't know the rules of MMA. I had all this control time, even though the judging criteria is not based on your fucking control time. It's based on damage, okay? Either way, in that fight, he showed us kind of a bad habit that I think nobody had really seen before, which is just going full Dustin Poirier. And you should never go full Dustin Poirier and jump guillotine 100 fucking times and never get it, okay? If you try it once and it doesn't work, don't do it again, okay? Either way, I also thought he beat Kevin Holland pretty convincingly. I know that the numbers make it look as though Kevin Holland won. He did land more significant strikes, but if you take a look at the breakdown of those significant strikes, a lot of them were leg kicks, and Kevin Holland throws pretty lazy leg kicks. They're not devastating Jonathan Martinez leg kicks. He's kind of just throwing them out there. I thought that Jack Della Maddalena, throughout the course of that fight, landed the, shots with way more substance. He was landing massive combos to the body, to the head. Kevin Holland's got an incredible chin, so it's not like he should have, nobody's knocking him for not knocking Kevin Holland out. I mean, who the fuck does that? Do you know what I mean? Either way, I could potentially see Jack Della Maddalena putting down Ian Gary. One, because of how he picks his shots. When he lands, they're fucking hard. He makes sure he's gonna land. You know what I mean? He has a very, very high percent rate of effectiveness in terms of his striking. Also, Ian Gary's got a really tiny little head, so I feel as though if Jack Della Maddalena were to crack that shit, he could put him out. Also, somebody might pick Ian Gary as a dark horse, but in my opinion, Jack Della Maddalena has fought better competition up until now, but for some reason does not have the hype that Ian Gary has, even though he's had finishes that are just as impressive. And Ian Gary, I know that a lot of people like to go on about the Neil Magny performance, and look, for me as somebody whose primary combat experience is kickboxing, it was a pleasure to watch, and it was it was entertaining and all that shit. Impressive for sure. However, Neil Magny has 11 losses on his record. Fucking 8 of those were finishes, right? He'd been finished by guys that are in the top of the welterweight division right now, recently. Shavkat Rakhmonov and one other, I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. One sec, let me just take a fucking look here. Either way, oh, Gilbert Burns, duh, quickly, the dart stroke or arm triangle, whatever it was, arm triangle, I believe. Either way, Ian Gary wasn't able to finish him, and we're acting as though this performance is what makes everybody believe he's going to be a champion, when nobody was really saying that about Gilbert Burns after he fucking smashed him in one round, right? Shavkat finished him in the second round, right? Ian Gary went all 3 rounds with the guy, didn't even really push for the finish, even though Neil Magny does not have stopping power. I think his last knockout or TKO is back in 2018. Do you know what I mean? Either way, dude. The only guys that haven't finished him are fucking Michael Chiesa, Ian Gary, and I can't remember the other guy off the top of my head, but regardless, dude, okay? In my opinion, Jack Della Maddalena's performances, his competition have been better, right? Ian Gary's fought a bunch of guys on skids and shit like that, so either way. Jack Della Maddalena is my dark horse. I think he would knock out Ian Gary if they were to fight. The only problem is the grapplers at the top of that division might give him a bit of trouble, but we will see. He's been working with Craig Jones, so maybe he's squaring all that away, okay? Middleweight. Now, I've got 2 for middleweight. One because of their grappling ability, and one for their stand-up and anti-grappling ability, okay? One is in the top 10, just on the edge of it, and one is outside of the top 15. Okay, after watching what Brendan Allen did to a guy who subbed Magomed Ankalaev, who subbed Jamal Hill, who subbed Nikita Krylov, in Paul Craig, it'd be hard not to pick him as a dark horse. I mean, his striking is not necessarily the greatest, but his grappling is fucking phenomenal, and his pressure on top is insane, and he doesn't rush to try and get a submission or rush to try and smash you. He will break you down systematically first. It's very impressive, like extremely impressive, and I think in his last 3 fights, they've all been finishes. Do you know what I mean? So, Brendan Allen is one of the dark horses, for sure, at the very least, in my opinion. Again, he's not really well known by the fans. I don't know what he's going to have to do to get a title shot. He doesn't have a huge personality. Do you know what I mean? He's not all that great on the microphone. I think that, dude, if after he did that to Paul Craig, I feel as though he should have called out Khamzat Chimaev. You know what I mean? Even if he's not going to get the Khamzat Chimaev fight, call him out just to make some fucking noise. Do you know what I mean? Get the Khamzat fanboys all riled up, talking shit on Instagram. Maybe his profile would grow a little bit. Regardless, I mean, the guy literally has less than 40,000 Instagram followers, and considering he's a top 10 fighter in the biggest organization on the planet, it's a little crazy. Either way, dude, middleweight B. Okay, my second dark horse for middleweight is Roman fucking Kopylov. This guy is one of my favorite fighters to watch do work, and dude, In a calendar year, September 2022 to 2023, went 4-0 with 4 finishes. Last loss was October 2021 to Albert Duraev, and right before that, he got subbed by Carl Robertson. After that, we saw a massive improvement in takedown defense and also range management. He wasn't rushing forward as much. He was much more patient with his shots, which is, by the way, how he lost both of those fights, right? One was subbed, one he was just kind of controlled on the ground. He's 32, which is kind of towards the end of the athletic prime, but we're in middleweight, so age historically has mattered less at middleweight and above, obviously. He's not long on the tooth for MMA either. He's 12-2, right? Making improvements at this age, which is nice to see. And if he continues to do so, I could see him going unbelievably far. I don't think there's a... Dude, it would be so interesting to see him fight with the guys at the top of middleweight in terms of striking. His striking is so fucking good. He's so good at picking shots. And like against Josh Fremd, the kicks weren't working because Josh Fremd is made of God knows fucking what, okay? So then he sets up the body shot with the punch and places it just perfectly on the liver because the kicks weren't doing it. And then Josh Fremd is forced to kind of give up. Do you know what I mean? So much fun to watch this guy fight. Takedown defense has gotten better since his losses in the UFC. Nasty finishes, like highlight reel shit every time out. And I don't think he's on a whole lot of people's radar. He doesn't have a huge following on social medias or anything like that either. I want them to give him like a Anthony Hernandez or a Chris Curtis or something like that to get him in the fucking mix in the rankings at middleweight, because I think that there's a lot of guys he would do horrible things to, especially on the feet, obviously. Moving up to light heavyweight, okay? This one was kind of tricky. So I picked Vitor Petrino, okay? Because there's light heavyweight still a bit of a mess right now, right? Because of Yuri Prohaska, like all the injuries and shit that have happened, all the belts changing and whatnot. We know that we've got title fights, all this shit. Bit of a mess, right? Vitor Petrino, though, I have a feeling we will see him well entrenched in like the top 10 to 13 range at some point in 2024. 10-0, 8 finishes since being in the UFC. Wait, no, there's a comma in between there. Don't get it twisted. Overall, he's got 10 wins, 8 finishes, comma. Since being in the UFC, he's beaten Anton Turkalj, thank God, okay, Prachnio, and Bukauskas, which are pretty good wins for a newcomer in his first 3 fights, and those last 2 against Prachnio and Bukauskas were both by finish. Absolute fucking monster with insane power, explosiveness, and despite being a pretty muscle-bound looking guy, the guy's fucking jacked, you know what I mean? He's pretty goddamn fast for a big boy also. I'll give a second one for light heavyweight, Carlos Ulberg. And I think this one might be a little bit more realistic. I think we'll see him probably get a faster push than Vitor Petrino. I think he should be in this conversation. He's a bit of a dark horse. Big fucking boy, okay? Big, tall, long dude. Had a tough night out in his debut against Nizin Chukwu. I think that's how you say it. Either way. Kennedy, right? And has been perfect ever since then. Winning 5 straight. 4 of them by finish, okay? I will say I didn't like the Dominic Reyes call-out, but it is what it is. And unfortunately, Dominic Reyes, I mean, you know, say what you want about his chin, I gotta fucking respect him for continuing to take these fights that are probably gonna end devastatingly so. Do you know what I mean? Because he accepted it, and they are fighting next. So I feel bad for Dom Reyes, but also credit to him for being a fucking G, because these are all tough fights that he's taking. Carlos Ulberg, though, after that Nizin Chukwu fight, has looked pretty goddamn phenomenal, and I think that his body type and the way that he moves and shit can cause a lot of problems for guys at the higher weight classes moving up to heavyweight. This one was a tough one because I think that no one past the top 3, meaning like 4 onwards, I don't think any of them beat anybody in the top 3. Aspinall, Gane, and Pavlovich, I think, will be at the top for the foreseeable future of heavyweight. And by the way, I'm not even including John Jones or Stipe Miocic in this because we know that they're going to be gone very soon. I am going to go with Waldo Cortez Acosta, okay, as my dark horse. Reason being, number 1, and this is an important one, he's a heavyweight that is not morbidly obese, okay? Number 2, there's a lot of them, okay? Number 2, he's lost 1 fight since being in the UFC, and it was to Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who is a vet, right? He's older, closing in on 40, which again doesn't matter as much for heavyweight. Pretty skilled in every aspect of MMA. And by the way, Waldo Cortez Acosta almost figured him out by the end of the fight, almost finished him. In fact, had Rogerio de Lima shooting when the majority of the fight he was chopping away at his legs. So that's something that I want him to work on, or at the very least I hope that he's working on his leg kick defense, because otherwise a lot of people are going to try that on him. But again, in that last round, he started smacking Rogerio de Lima around, who's in the top 15 right now. Also, he's only 32 years old, which is pretty young for the heavyweight division. He's got time to improve. The guy was a pro boxer for a good long while, so we know his hands are squared away, right? We don't need that. Improve on leg kick defense, as well as maybe implementing some of your own to help set up those nasty fucking hands that he's got, right? Also, takedown defense. I'm sure guys are going to try to take him down as soon as the bell rings, because they know that he was a professional boxer, right? He's got stopping power. He even has a sub on his record, which was his first pro fight, by the way, against a guy who had 15 pro fights. So it's not like he's completely useless on the ground. He's got an upcoming fight in January against Andrei Arlovsky, and if he gets that one done, I think that would put him close to getting a ranked opponent, and then we see him start to climb those rankings. And that first one, for me, the first point that I made, he's not morbidly obese, for me, is important, because some of the guys at the lower end of the top 15 are, and I think that he'll be able to outmaneuver them and fuck them up with his hands if he gets the opportunity to. Anyways, these have been all my dark horses for every single division in the UFC. Again, let me know if you've got a different dark horse than I do in the comments below. Like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.